Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Mission Possible Sofa. This is Edie's time to sit back, relax and talk sustainable business with a number of industry figureheads. We're broadcasting once again from the sidelines here at Edie Live. We're approaching the end of day one of the show. It's been a packed day. All of the theatres have been pretty packed throughout the day. And before we all head back home to our hotels, to have a good night's sleep, I've managed to grab three more speakers for the sofa. So working nearest to furthest, we've got Michelle Norman, who's the Corporate Affairs and Sustainability Director for the drinks manufacturer Lucozade Ribena Suntory. We've then got Marcel Arsand, who is the Chairman of the UK can manufacturing industry body, the can makers, and he also holds a sustainability role at the packaging company Ball Corporation. And Brendan Rouse, who's the Sustainability Manager for the UK's largest listed property developer, Landsec. So welcome along, hello. Have you met before, or is this the first time you've met? No, okay. Well, there we go, that's what Edie Live's all about. So let's start with a quick recap then of the sessions that you sat in on just now and spoken on. Michelle, you were over on the Circular Economy Theatre, is that right?
I was talking about Lucozade and Ribena's approach to circularity and how we engage consumers. Great session, really engaged audience, lots of questions and quite an interesting topic as well. I was sitting alongside Costa and Mother Care and I really enjoyed the session actually, it was very good.
Okay, great. And Marcel, how about you? You were also on the Circular Economy
Correct,
Theatre,
yeah, in the morning.
Another session.
Yes, in the morning, yeah. So yeah, my presentation was all about, we were talking a lot on plastic and the impact plastic is doing, but we're not talking much about what is the alternative and how these alternatives can, maybe is already available in the market. So we have beverage cans that is the most recycled beverage container in the planet, and consumers not necessarily understand that. So we just keep reinforcing the message that we have a ready for circular economy product that is being a little bit, disconsidered at the moment. So we need to be more emphatic about these facts.
And Brendan, you've literally just walked off stage straight onto here, so you've come away from the Energy Theatre. What was the session about and what was your key takeaways?
So I did a presentation on how Landsec has become an energy management leader, the past, where we come from, what we're aiming for, and it was chaired by Manish Dutta from UK GBC. So the net zero carbon agenda was quite high on his wishes of things we were talking about, and it was a great session.
So given that 2 out of the 3 of us have been focused on the circular economy and resource efficiency theatres, I feel like we should start there. Michelle, Lucozade's gone through quite a remarkable transformation journey really over the last couple of years with plastics. Talk us through where you're at right now on that journey. What's the where are you at? What's the challenge? What's the point that you now need to push on from?
Yeah, well, I think the word challenge is definitely the right word to use, Luke. It's a very complex environment out there, a lot of external pressure from our consumers, from government, and the expectations are quite high that as a manufacturer that you do the right thing by people, by the planet. So our journey has been listening, I guess is the first point, listening to what people are saying, listening to what our consumers expect from us. And I think they expect us to be more responsible, to use less plastic, to use alternatives where we can, to not use excessive packaging, and for the plastic we do use, to treat it in a way that's maybe different from the way it's been treated in the past. So for us that means embracing circularity, making plastic be seen not as plastic waste when it gets to the end of its journey, but as a valuable resource that we want to collect back and use again and again and again. So where we are at the moment, fully entered into and embracing circularity, whether that's supporting the deposit return scheme initiatives that are being proposed by the government at the moment, and wanted to play our role within that to make it happen in a really positive way that is simple and easy to understand for consumers, because at the end of the day they've got to put them into a machine and we've got to get them back. So that's the first point. Making sure that we look at our supply chain right from the manufacturing, working with our suppliers to use less packaging, the most efficient use of resources that we can use, and then looking to see the whole journey through the entire value chain, so educating consumers about what they can then do once they get hold of our beverage containers and what our expectations is of them, and vice versa as well. So we're doing everything from bottle redesigns to looking at the materials that we use, pretty much everything you could think of, even through to edible packaging, doing lots of different trials and things that we can do as well. So very interesting times, very complex times, but it's definitely, we are a company that want to change and are eager to change and are fully embracing the changes that are on our doorstep.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how quickly over the last couple of years, just having overseen Edie and the news agenda, and suddenly Lucozade is now coming out as a sort of a leader, at least for the alternative, and holding up the flag for looking for alternatives. Marcel, I think it's probably a good point to bring you in, representing kind of can manufacturers. When you hear a company like Lucozade saying that kind of thing, how do you feel? Can you see a role for plastics at all, or do you agree or think that the alternative has to be an entirely plastic-free alternative?
No, absolutely, there's always a role for each packaging materials now. Aluminium is not going to substitute everything, unfortunately or fortunately. But for us, it's more like trying to make sure, if you are promoting packaging that is designed with recycling in mind, that's fantastic. If there's a plastic or there's a glass, doesn't matter. We all have a material. For us, is like the key thing is like if it is to be used, it has to be used with circularity in mind. So are we happy with materials being sent to Asia and have absolutely no site to that? Are we happy producing packaging that's because of the design, the marketing design, the color is no longer being able to go back to bottle? And that's the question we want to push and be part of the conversation. So yeah, of course, there's always going to be a role for other materials. For us, we're trying to keep aluminium in the loop as much as we can. Metal is a permanent material, so it's a beauty for the material. So like even if it goes to if you generate waste and send to incinerator, we can capture that on the bottom ash of the incinerator, because metal can be recycled over and over. So like it's an advantage of the material that we even though we'd rather be collected at recycling level, keep the quality higher. Even if we don't do that, at the end of the life, in the worst case scenario, we can still recover from incinerating bottom ash. And so investing in these technologies where these are substituting landfills at the moment, so suddenly there's a lot of unrecyclable going to those fractions there. So it's all part of collecting and recycling on the go, changing consumers' behavior, but then as a kind of as a net, we can still capture this at the right end of the recycling chain.
Okay. Brendan's been sat there patiently on the end, and I appreciate plastics isn't kind of like a real primary material, I guess, of yours, but tell us what relationship a company like Landsec does have with plastics and where you're at on this.
Yeah, so we don't really sell any consumables, as it were. We build and operate buildings, but we do own a large number of retail centres across the UK, and so the retailers within the grab and go guys, obviously they sell a lot of bottles and plastic water bottles, etc. So we kind of see ourselves as a facilitator for improvement. What can we do to help them? So one great campaign that we ran last year called Refill Me, where we got over 150 of the units throughout our centres in the UK to sign up to fill up anybody's water bottle without any need for a purchase. So in the first year we've rolled that out across our retail and our sort of our retailers in London, and no pushback. Everybody was really keen to join in. They happily put their stickers in their front shop windows, and the reports that we've got back that customers are really happy with that. I think there's a thing about the stiff British upper lip that maybe some people aren't too keen on going up to a shop and asking for their water bottle to be refilled, so we're also looking at providing sort of machines to do that for them, so they don't have to any human face-to-face interaction. They go to a machine and fill up their water bottles. And then on the wider circular economy thing is the retail sector is really sort of battling this throwaway culture maybe, and we look at, because we're a conduit really for all these different retailers, we're bringing them together. We've had a workshop or a seminar where some of the leading circular economy retailers have presented their business cases to others to try and sort of facilitate some action going forward.
And that's one of the things that's come out today is working in partnership, that no one business can solve the issues by themselves. So you need to work with your retailers, with your suppliers, with manufacturers right through the value chain to actually make change happen.
Yeah. I'll cross that one off then, because that was what I was going to mention next. But actually, the other thing I think that is fundamental to this debate is infrastructure and the policy side of things. You mentioned the deposit return scheme. I just wanted a quick comment from you on sort of where do you immediately think that infrastructure is part of the challenge or part of a solution here? Is there one thing that you sort of see happening or should be happening at the moment that could that could hopefully move this forward and solve the kind of plastics issue at the moment from an infrastructure point of view?
I definitely think we need a huge amount of change around infrastructure. I mean, Brendan mentioned the on-the-go culture. We know there's not the infrastructure there to currently support efficient recycling from people when they're out and about, so that's one thing that definitely needs to change, is our attitude towards that. But then the actual facilities that we send our products to recover, recycle, process, as you mentioned, being sent abroad, that's not acceptable. We actually have to keep things here in the UK. We should manage our own waste and manage it efficiently. So infrastructure for our company is crucially important, because we can do everything we can within our control to manage our own materials, but then when they get out into the public domain and there's not the infrastructure there, people in the street will become frustrated that nothing is actually happening and change won't come. So it all has to work in a joined up way.
Yeah, and I think on the deposit return scheme initiative, I think that's the knowledge gap, we have at the moment, because we're trying to replicate schemes that were implemented in other countries that are not necessarily as populous as ours. Like in the Nordics, best case scenario 10 million people, when we have 66 million people consume on the go, on retail shop. And then, how do you answer those questions? We try to create a working groups to try to help government to tackle this. You go to Glastonbury with 130,000 people consuming, cans and bottles every day throughout the, on the campsite. Do you expect to have a reverse vending machine for those guys to be queuing there? How do you do that convenient so you don't forfeit your right to have your deposit back, but at the same time you enjoy the event? How to avoid people scavenging other people's bins in the night, the day before the collection, just because there might be a couple of pounds there, and some people go. So there's a lot of things we need to think about how to do that in a nice way without heavily depending on machines, because that becomes quite expensive for the system. How to get charities involved. Can we donate to Oxfam, and they can be able to redeem that and get them. So, which other countries not necessarily have this as a cultural thing, or people are happy to take to that.
Interesting. Any further comments, or are you happy to?
Yes, I think there's a complexity being built now into recycling plastics. I've had a really interesting talks with Sky. Obviously, they've led on this, and I didn't realise the difficulties that they've gone through to find alternatives. So there's a complexity, there is a need for infrastructure, so coffee cup recycling, which is something that we've looked at, which is huge, and there's sporadic cases now where you'll have specialised bins just for coffee cup recycling, but until they're widespread, until they are the norm, they're not the norm. So there's a lot on that, and then also we're trying to make it a much more pleasant experience. So for example, clothes recycling. We've had a trial at one of our shopping centre in Oxford, where we've got a space now dedicated for people to bring back their old clothes, because I think if you traditionally go into those recycling bins at the backs of supermarkets and whatever, a lot of time they're full, they're not pleasant places to be. So again, making the recycling option a more pleasant experience and doing our bit with what we can here.
Yeah. And actually, you're almost touching there on, I think, what is the sort of the third part of the triumvirate here, which is behaviour change and engagement with consumers ultimately are using these products, because you could have an alternative material, you could have the infrastructure in place, but if they're putting it in the wrong bin, then it's not gonna, the whole system's not going to work. This is my shameless plug, our Mission Possible report, which has just been published today on edie, we included a survey within that where we asked 250 sustainability professionals from across the country about the various drivers and challenges and opportunities that they face on a daily basis. We asked them what their biggest challenge was for sustainable business in 2019. Probably no surprises. Actually, well, there was a little bit of a surprise, because engagement and behaviour change wasn't the highest challenge. It was cited by 37% of respondents. Interestingly, business growth and short-termism was the highest challenge, 39%. But then when you looked particularly on the energy side of things, and we asked energy managers that same question, it was 45% was behaviour change. Second was a good 15% off that, energy prices, I think it was. So my point is that I guess the sad truth is, if we'd have done this survey 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I feel like you'd maybe still be getting similar results, but behavioural change is still the biggest challenge. So I wanted to find out from you why you think that is, why the dial has why it's been so hard to move the dial, and whether or not you get a genuine sense now that with a thing like the plastics issue, or with energy and the current climate, whether you think this is kind of starting to change, and if so, why? It's a very long, complex question, so I don't mind who wants to jump in on that.
There was some of the presenters earlier said a great thing around, now that we've got the Greta Thunberg, Extinction Rebellion, school strikes, and David Attenborough's documentary, the scary thing for us now is suddenly people are listening. And it's like, okay, actually, what's my message? Have we got the message right? So I think things have progressed, and we have been doing this, I guess, for a long time. There's been people in the background trying to push this agenda. I just think we've gotten better at it, which is great. I think there's a lot of people, like say, partnering, learning from each other, getting the messages right, getting messages that are tailored to the audience, that are going to motivate the audience to act in the way that you want to. So I'm fairly positive, I'm optimistic that we've got where we are. We've increased now the awareness of this agenda because we've gotten better.
Yeah. Any further comments on sort of behaviour change and where it's currently at? Any things you're seeing that's potentially quite interesting at the moment with this side of things?
Yeah, I think my perspective of the industry, like a few years ago, anybody with sustainability in the title was more like a ticking box exercise. We all know we invited for the big parties, the big events. Suddenly everybody wants to talk sustainability. We want to be heard by that. So it's no longer just a ticking box exercise on the CSR report. Published once a year. Consumers are really aware of that. Consumers are really pushing that. NGOs are really aware and not letting any claims and pledges going easily at the moment. So, which is quite good because keep us on track as well. Because impact we all have in every part of the supply chain. Like how to minimize, how to make the best of what we produce, and how to keep this in the. So it's always good to have the awareness because we are all consumers at the end of the day.
I think there's probably never been a higher consumer awareness around sustainability and the need for change. It's translating that into that behaviour change is the absolute key. And I think for people, everyday people, life's tough, life's complex, there's lots going on. We need to make it simple and easy so it just becomes part and parcel of everyday life. So if we're expecting change has got to be simple and easy and not overcomplicated. So I think it's our responsibility as manufacturers. Government can play their part, retailers can play their part, etc. But we just need to make sure that the behaviour change that we're expecting is simple and easy to do, and then we'll get great results.
Good. Well, I'm aware that someone's probably going to come on a tannoy quite soon and tell us we need to leave. So I'll wrap up with one final question, which is going to be the same question that I asked to the last group on this sofa to sign off, which is, following the fact that we just published that Mission Possible 2019 report, which is all about driving sustainability action and encouraging it from more businesses outside of these show floors, I wanted to ask each of you for your kind of one key piece of advice that you would give to a sustainability, CSR, environmental or energy professional that's out there that wants to achieve Mission Possible. They kind of know what the mission is, but they may be struggling to get that mission driven through the business for whatever reason. I just wondered if, based on your experience, you had one key piece of advice you would offer them today.
I'm happy to start. I think the crux of it, and it's actually reflected in your survey, is you have to, as a sustainability manager, get very close to your business growth strategy and therefore integrate your sustainability plans into that, because unless it's part of your business growth strategy, it just becomes an add-on. So that is probably the most important piece of advice, is know your business growth strategy and get sustainability fully integrated so it's seen as a driver of growth.
For me, it's like, sustainability has to be part of the business, the part of the business, and you can only change what you know. So monitoring is absolutely important. So look back at what you're doing, where you can. And sometimes savings can be on the most bizarre. Like for the Canadian, sometimes on an old washer that is not as efficient. The savings is astronomical once you implement that. So the cost efficiency of changing a small piece of equipment sometimes can make a lot of difference on the overall impact. But you need to understand that. So doing monitoring, understand where your energy or your consumption or your impact is higher, and start slowly, bit by bit.
At the moment, there is such momentum right now that I'd say be ambitious, set really ambitious targets, whether it's zero plastic, net zero carbon. use the current momentum to be ambitious, and then also it's a negotiation, so set what you want further than what you think you might get, and maybe you can be negotiated down a bit, but you'll end up in a really good place either way.
A very good note on that bombshell. I think it's a good time to wrap up. Thanks so much to our panellists, to Michelle Norman from Lucozade Ribena Suntory, Marcel Arsand from Can Makers and Ball Corporation, and Brendan Rouse from Landsec. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. For more Mission Possible Sofa Talks, you can visit edie.net/mission-possible. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thank you.